In my last talk to the Ramana Maharshi Foundation, London, I passed on some remarks on sannyasa that I'd heard Papaji say. The gist was that he had travelled all over India and that, in his opinion, many of the householders he had met in their homes were more advanced spiritually than any of the thousands of sadhus and swamis he had encountered in the Himalayas. My mind immediately went to two of his own devotees, Surendra Kaur, a Sikh lady, and Sharad Tiwari, an engineer from Madhya Pradesh. In the photo on the screen, Sharad Tiwari is on the left, while Surendra Kaur is on the right. Her husband, Ganga Singh, is standing between her and Papaji. I'm going to give separate talks on these two outstanding devotees today. The first talk, I'm focusing on Surendra Kaur. The presentation on Sharad will follow later. In early 1993, Papaji asked me to help with a documentary that was being made about him. This is me interviewing him for the film In a Park in Lucknow. Excerpts from this interview appeared in the film, and the whole interview eventually came out under the title Ramana Iyer, Keep Quiet. Part of this filmmaking process involved interviewing devotees about the experiences they had had with him. Papaji sent a few of his old devotees along to talk to me in front of the camera, and Surendra Kaur was one of them. She didn't speak any English, so she brought along her son Titu to act as a translator. When she spoke, it was in Punjabi. The name Kaur, by the way, is given to all Sikh women. It is the female equivalent of Singh, and it translates as princess or lioness. This is Surendra Kaur sitting with Papaji in his Lucknow living room in 1993 or 1994. Titu, her son, is the man sitting next to her. I didn't know her before I sat down to talk to her. I was quite new in Lucknow. All I knew was that Papaji had sent her along to tell her story. I admit I found it extremely difficult to get her to open up and tell me anything. It wasn't just the language barrier. I seem to recollect that whenever I asked her a question, she would respond by saying some variation of, "I am nothing," or "I am nothingness." In the end, I decided not to use any of her interview in the film because her monosyllabic comments filtered through a translator seemed too disjointed. If I had known then what I now know, I would have persisted with the interview. Since her story is truly outstanding, it would have been nice to have the full story I'm about to tell today recorded on film. Unfortunately, those rough films I made in the 90s seem to have disappeared. A few years later, when I was compiling Nothing Ever Happened, I interviewed her again, and this time she was prepared to open up a bit more. I included her story in volume 3 of the series. The cover of that book, along in its most recent edition, is on the right. I'm going to read out the Nothing Ever Happened account in full. Before I begin, I need to mention that her husband, Ganga Singh, seen on the right with Papaji, was a former army doctor who had been a follower of Papaji for many years. He was the one who introduced her to Papaji in 1980. By that time, Dr. Ganga Singh had been visiting for many years. I actually met Dr. Singh at Ramanashram around 1990, but he had passed away before I first visited Papaji in 1992. This is Surendra Kaur's account in her own words. The photo of her and her husband dates from around the time of their first meeting in 1980. And this is what she said. My husband had been regularly visiting Papaji for some time. I didn't want to go with him because I had a fixed idea that there were no longer any living gurus in the world. We come from the Sikh tradition, and Sikhs believe that the last true human guru died hundreds of years ago. I believed in the great saints of the past, but I wasn't prepared to believe that there might be one living nearby in Lucknow. Although I had never met him, I just assumed that Papaji was a fraud. She continues, one day after both my husband and my son had failed to persuade me to accompany them on one of their regular visits to Papaji, they both said to me, "Since you refuse to come with us, we will stay at home today." This is Surendra Kaur and Ganga Singh with Papaji near his house in Nari, Lucknow. The man on the other side is Sharad Tiwari. I mentioned him at the beginning of today's talk as one of the outstanding householder devotees of Papaji. As I said then, I'll be doing a separate talk on his association with Papaji. This is Surendra Kaur, though I had no interest in seeing Papaji myself, I didn't want to deprive either my husband or my son of his company, since they both obviously enjoyed their visits. I agreed to go with them on that day, but before we left, I insisted on one condition. I will not prostrate to this man, I will not touch his feet, because I do not accept the authority of human teachers. Some background here, the 10th Guru in the Sikh lineage, Guru Gobind Singh, didn't appoint a human successor. He handed over spiritual authority to the Guru Granth Sahib, the canon of the Sikh scriptures. True Sikhs accept these texts as the final authority and no longer accept that human teachers have the same authority as the early Sikh lineage. This is why Surendra Kaur, an orthodox Sikh, was so unwilling to show any sign of deference to Papaji. She continues, they both agreed, saying that it wouldn't be necessary for me to acknowledge him in any formal way. I was introduced to Papaji by my husband, but Papaji didn't seem interested in speaking to me. Instead, he began to speak in English, a language I don't know very well, to my husband and my son. This is a part of the story that I find a little odd. Everyone in the room spoke Punjabi as his or her native language, but Papaji initially chose to speak in a language that he must have known she didn't understand. Perhaps he sensed that she didn't want to take part in the proceedings and merely wanted to be present in the room to fulfill her minimum obligation of just meeting him. And that's Sharad Tiwari, by the way. He's peeping in a lot of these pictures. He's the person on the left of the photo. So Surendra Kaur continues with her account. I'm not going to get much from this man, I thought. He doesn't even speak in a language that I can understand. I decided to ignore them. Instead, I began to repeat Wahaguru, Wahaguru, which was my spiritual practice in those days. Wahaguru is a Sikh invocation that means great or glorious Guru. It denotes the supreme formless Guru rather than any particular human manifestation. Surendra Kaur continues. Though his attention was apparently on my husband and son, Papaji noticed that I was doing some kind of japa. Turning to me, he asked in Punjabi, what kind of spiritual practice are you doing? I replied that I was repeating Wahaguru, Wahaguru. Why should it be necessary to repeat this phrase again and again, he asked. If you say it properly, once will be enough. Surendra Kaur and her husband are standing on the right of this group photo, which was again taken outside Papaji's house in the 1980s. Surendra Kaur continues, since I didn't understand what he was pointing at, he decided to teach me, using 2 apples as a teaching aid. During our initial exchange, they had been lying on a table in front of him. Papaji picked them up and then replaced them on the table in such a way that there was a big gap between them. These 2 apples represent 2 utterances of the phrase Wahaguru, Wahaguru, he announced. He removed 1 apple and said, 1 phrase, 1 repetition has just come and gone. Picking up the other apple, he continued, I have taken away the second Wahaguru before you can say it. Now, between the disappearance of the first Wahaguru and the start of the second Wahaguru, what is there? What is left? Surendra Kaur, this is her response. I knew the answer was nothing, but it wasn't an answer that appeared in my mind. In the moment he asked the question, I knew myself to be that nothingness, that emptiness. His question made me aware of what I really am. I couldn't answer his question because I wasn't capable of uttering even a single word. But I knew without a doubt who and what I was. The knowledge that I'm nothingness, emptiness, was revealed to me in that moment, and it has remained with me ever since. That was her standard way of telling the story if anyone asked about it. As I found out in my first meeting with her, if anyone tried to get extra information out of her, she would usually respond by saying, "I am nothing," or "I am nothingness." However, prompted by Papaji, and I suspect orders from him to cooperate fully and be more expansive, she sat down with me one day and gave me the following remarkable elaborations. This, incidentally, is my favorite photo of her sitting with Papaji and looking absolutely radiant. This is how our conversation went. David, you always describe your state as emptiness. Why do you pick this particular word rather than any other? Surendra Kaur, he emptied me of everything. That is my state. David, I have never heard you use words such as peace, bliss, happiness, etc. to describe your state. You always use negative words such as nothingness and emptiness. Do you feel that these positive words don't apply to your experience? Surendra Kaur, I can say that self is flowing. More than that, I cannot say because no words apply to it. David, what arises in this emptiness? How do you see and relate to phenomena that arise in this emptiness? Surendra Kaur, life goes on, but I am totally empty. The body performs various actions, but no thought is needed to perform them. All these actions go on spontaneously, involuntarily, and automatically. David, what about the ordinary emotions that arise in all people? Do you ever, for example, feel anger, fear, or sadness? Surendra Kaur, all these things happen on the surface. If there is an occasion for grief, the body cries. At other times, there may be happiness. These are all the workings of samsara. They happen by themselves on the surface, but they are nothing to do with me. I am the emptiness that underlies them. David, I get the feeling that your abiding in this state sometimes keeps away negative emotional states. A few years ago, at your husband's funeral in 1990, the knowledge you had of your true nature enabled you to transcend the grief that might otherwise have arisen. Surendra Kaur, yes, this is correct. While the cremation was going on, I knew that there was no reason to be sad. While I was looking at the funeral pyre, I had the knowledge that it was not my husband who was being cremated. She described what she felt at the time. The 5 elements collected together in the form of this body, now they are going back to wherever they were collected from. My husband did not come or go. This knowledge was there in me, and it prevented me from crying. Papaji was there on that occasion. I turned to him and said, "You have made me into a tigress." I felt completely untouched by it all. Even Papaji was crying on that occasion, but I felt nothing at all. Little side commentary here. Jnanis tend to reflect the moods of the people around them. They mirror the emotions of the jivas in their vicinity, even though internally in the heart they may be unmoved by external events. Bhagavan, for example, would weep with distraught mothers who had lost their children. In explaining this, he would often quote the words that appear on the screen. I don't know what the original source is, but it appears to be a well-known saying that declares, "The jnani weeps with the weeping, laughs with the laughing, plays with the playful, sings with those who sing, keeping time to the song." As Surendra Kaur noted, she was so deeply settled in self-abidance at the time of her husband's funeral, she just registered the event as elements going back to what they were before they combined to make the body of her husband. The interview continues. David, sometimes Papaji compares the state of enlightenment to a diamond. I give people diamonds, he says, but it is up to them to protect them and look after them. Some people throw away the diamonds because they don't appreciate the value of what they've been given. Did you ever feel that you had to protect this diamond that had been given to you? Surendra Kaur, it is not an object that one can hold on to, protect, or throw away. It is the natural state. It's there all the time. It cannot be thrown away or retained. At the bottom, that's Papaji giving satsang in Lucknow in 1993. I should mention that a lot of people had what appeared to be direct experiences of the self in Papaji's presence, but in the vast majority of cases, they were temporary. Papaji himself said that if the vasanas had not been fully extinguished at the time of the experience, the mind and the individual identity will inevitably return. Surendra Kaur is one of the few this didn't happen to. Her experience happened on their first meeting with Papaji in 1980, and the experience remained steady for the rest of her life. She didn't need to be vigilant to look after it or guard it. It was constantly and effortlessly there. I continued with this line of questioning. David, this may be so, but I have come across many people who have told me that the direct experience they had through Papaji's grace subsequently wore off or disappeared. Why do you think your experience stayed, and why do you think these other people lost theirs? And this was her response. Yes, some people go back to their worldly life and forget what they've been shown. When they get steeped in worldliness, they lose awareness of the underlying emptiness. In a class of students, one may pass and all the others may fail. The teacher gives out the same knowledge, the same training to everyone in class, but if only one student truly absorbs it and keeps it, is it the fault of the teacher? The others were given the same teaching, but if they all forgot it at the time of their exams, they have no one to blame but themselves. Here's my next question. David, since you say that you never had to make any effort to retain the knowledge and emptiness that Papaji gave you, why do you think you passed the exam whereas so many other people failed? Surendra Kaur, it's Guru's grace. The interview continued. You had this experience within a few minutes of seeing him for the first time. Thousands of other people who have been to see him did not receive such grace from him. Out of all those people, why do you think he picked you? Surendra Kaur, he is the one who has to answer this question, not me. All I know is that he caught hold of me and pulled me into himself. But if you want to know why me, you must go and ask him yourself. And my next questions were, David, did you have a strong desire for liberation before you met him? Surendra Kaur, I can say that I was a very religiously minded person. I read the Guru Granth Sahib, the Sikh scripture, regularly. David, was this one of the reasons you got it so quickly? Surendra Kaur, in many places it states that one must submit to the Lord, that one must devote oneself completely to him, and that if one can do this, the Lord will grant liberation. I read this every day, and I wanted it to happen to me. I persisted with this line. David, would you say that you had an intense, strong desire for liberation, or just a little interest, a vague hope that it might happen one day? Surendra Kaur, after my marriage, when I came to live with my husband, I had a firm determination to succeed. I remember saying to myself, I'm going to devote my life to God. So the determination was there. I continued. David, you still come to see Papaji regularly. What is it that keeps pulling you here again and again? Surendra Kaur. Papaji once asked me the same question. One day, a few years ago, when I turned up with my husband, he asked, you came 2 days ago, you came yesterday, and you've come today. Why do you keep coming? Surendra Kaur, I answered, you called us, you attracted us, therefore we have come. I have received so much love, so much grace from Papaji, I feel drawn to him. Again and again. I used to lie in bed thinking, night will soon be over. As soon as it is daylight, I will be able to go and see him again. One time when I went to see him early in the morning, after thinking about him for most of the night, he remarked, you didn't let me sleep last night. You were thinking about me so much, I couldn't sleep. When I read this old account recently, as I was preparing this talk, I was immediately reminded of a story that Saudama told me about the time she was constantly thinking of Lakshmana Swami in the mid-1970s. Lakshmana Swami is on the right in a photo that was taken in the 1970s, and above on the left is a photo of me in Saudama standing in their Arunachala Hridayam garden about 20 years later. At the peak of her devotional fervor, Saudama told me that she was looking at Lakshmana Swami's photo or repeating his name 20 hours a day. And in the remaining 4 hours of sleep, she would usually be dreaming about him. So the focus on him was non-stop 24 hours a day. Lakshmana Swami told me that he would occasionally be jolted out of his deep sleep by the intensity of her devotional outpourings. That's what Papaji was reporting to Surendra Kaur in the previous slide. That Lakshmana Swami, asked her once if she could tone it down a bit at night so he could get some sleep, but she replied, "I can't. It's involuntary now. I have no control over it." Lakshmana Swami told me on a different occasion that for the final year or so of her sadhana at his ashram, he never had a good night's sleep because her constant strong thoughts of him woke him up several times a night. When I talk to people who are following the path of devotion to name and form of the Guru, I often cite this story. I tell them that these practices are not going to be fully effective, though, until the flow is constant and strong enough to compel the attention of the Guru. I should also mention that Ramana Maharshi once said that the key to successful japa is not the strength of the attention, but the amount of love one feels towards the form whose name is being chanted. Without that love, japa can sometimes become just an exercise in developing concentration. But if the love is there and flowing towards the form of the beloved, it can dissolve the mind completely. Back to our interview. Surendra Kaur. A couple of times Papaji told me that while he was traveling, he felt obliged to return to Lucknow to come and see me. Some power was pulling me to him, and that same power occasionally pulled him towards me. On both occasions, when he returned to Lucknow to see me, he asked, "Why did you call me? Why did you make me come here?" There is a Punjabi proverb about a thief who is robbing a house. Now, this is Surendra Kaur sitting with Papaji in his Lucknow living room. She continues, Surendra Kaur, usually the thief runs off dragging his bundle of stolen property with him. But this proverb talks about a bundle that wants to run off dragging the thief behind it. In the beginning, it was my husband who dragged me along to see Papaji, but after some time, I was the one who was always trying to persuade him to come along with me. Papaji wasn't complaining when he asked why I continued to come. He was just curious. Whenever I came, he always showed me a lot of love and affection. David, can you give an example of how this love manifested? Surendra Kaur. One time we were sitting facing each other, eye to eye. Papaji was smiling at me and I was smiling back at him. He broke the silence by saying, "I feel so happy looking at you, I want to kiss you." "So why don't you?" I responded. I think he was a little shocked. One of the young Western women might have said this to him, but I don't think he expected such a statement from a middle-aged Indian housewife. People just don't behave like this in our country. I challenged him. "You have been to the West, met many people there, and you have learned all their habits. In foreign countries, people kiss each other just to show each other how happy they are. Are you so attached to your Indian conditioning that you can't kiss someone you feel happy with?" He laughed, came forward, and gave me a big hug and a kiss. I continued with my questioning. David, does your experience change in any way when you're in his presence? Surendra Kaur. No, but there is always an intense peace there. It is my experience that thoughts cannot survive in his presence. Whatever I am carrying in my head stops in the moment I see him. In the beginning, when I first started coming to him, he would tell me to keep looking at him whenever I came. He would also look at me for long periods. Under his unwavering gaze, everything would disappear. No thoughts, no mind, no world. David, do you feel that other people are benefited by your experience? For example, do people feel quiet around you in the same way that people seem to experience peace around Papaji? Surendra Kaur. I am not in a position to say what state other people are in. I know how much jaggery, brown sugar, I have eaten, and I know what it tastes like. I cannot say how much jaggery other people have eaten or what the taste is like for them. Other people's states are not my business. Before I continue with Surendra Kaur's answer, I want to show a letter that Papaji wrote to her in 1987. A few slides ago, she said that Papaji had told her that while he was traveling, he felt obliged to return to Lucknow to come and see her. The strength of her thoughts about him pulled him back to Lucknow and compelled him to come and see her. This is what he wrote. 27th July 1987, Haridwar, Smith Surendra Kaur ji. I feel as if I went to Lucknow only to see you. I am very happy that I saw you before I came back to Haridwar. All the time I was in the train, I was wondering how you had managed to solve the problem of life so quickly. You crossed over the samsara of births and deaths. I send you my blessings to proceed further into the unknown region where only rare ones had entered. I am very sure you are a qualified person to go beyond. Worry not, you will be emancipated. Crossing over the samsara of births and deaths is a good definition of realization. So why is Papaji encouraging Surendra Kaur to, as he puts it, proceed further? He used to say that once realization has happened, it is possible to plunge deeper into the self and discover new facets and characteristics of it. I think he is encouraging Surendra Kaur to take up this post-realization journey. Papaji continued his letter to Surendra Kaur by quoting some of his favorite lines from Kabir. This is the letter continuing. Always think of the last line of Saint Kabir's Bani, sacred utterance. Japa mare, ajapa mare. I'm not going to read out the rest of it because my pronunciation will be terrible. But what the verse is saying in English is that initially japa dies and then ajapa dies. Japa is the voluntary repetition of the divine name done with effort. Ajapa is when the name repeats itself spontaneously and automatically. The Vani continues by saying, the vibration in the heart subsides and disappears. Then awareness gets absorbed in the original holy word, and time cannot consume that. The words Papaji deems to be the most important, the ones that precede stop here, don't turn behind, never look forward, stay here and now, are Surat, which denotes consciousness, Saman, which means the same as or equal to, while Shabd is the divine word in the Sikh tradition. Papaji is here equating consciousness with the divine word and is ordering Surendra Kaur to abide in that consciousness and not allow any thoughts of past and future to arise within it. I will continue reading the letter, starting after the last word of the transliteration. Stop here, don't turn behind, never look forward, stay here and now, and write to me. Where do you abide? I hope Dr. Ganga Singh has translated well. With good wishes, your own father, Harivansh. Papaji's full name was Harivansh Lal Punja. Before I continue with Papaji's own explanation of this verse, I'm going to narrate a long story from his life that provides some context to these teachings on japa and the japa. A detailed explanation of this Kabir verse will appear within the story I'm about to tell. Papaji gave me this information while I was compiling this biography. Nothing ever happened. In 1947, Papaji was working in Madras. At that time, Mahatma Gandhi was staying there and holding evening prayer meetings. Papaji ended up becoming one of his unofficial attendants, managing the people who were always trying to get close to Gandhi. This is Papaji's own account of some of the incidents that took place there. Bear with me, after a few paragraphs you'll understand why I'm including this story. Mahatma Gandhi was another person in whom the name of God was repeating itself spontaneously and effortlessly. His lifelong Ram Japa had so permeated him that when he was shot without warning by the assassin's bullet, he spontaneously chanted the name of Ram before falling down dead. The name arose in him at the moment of his death because it was continuously with him during his life. I know this to be true because I met him many times in Madras in 1947. At this stage of his life, Gandhiji had been abandoned by all the political leaders of the Congress party. All the other leaders wanted to partition India in order to create a separate Muslim state of Pakistan. Gandhi had refused to go along with this. Papaji continues, he, Gandhi, had said they can cut my body and partition it if they want to, but they cannot partition India. India is one. The other politicians were pragmatists. They wanted partition because it seemed to them to be the most sensible thing to do. One of these politicians was Rajagopalachari, who later became the last Governor General of India. I occasionally used to visit him because he lived quite close to me and make North Indian food for him, because he couldn't get it very easily in Madras. So at the time I was visiting Gandhi, there was only a small group around him. Each evening he would conduct a communal chanting of the name of Ram. I went regularly and became an unofficial attendant. Because he was quite old and frail, I would help him to and from the platform, and if there were any announcements to be made, I would make them at the end of the meeting. I found the photo on the left online. Its caption there stated that it was taken at one of Gandhi's 1947 prayer meetings in Madras. The photo on the right is of Gandhi and Rajagopalachari together. Rajagopalachari was a senior Congress politician who was born in Tamil Nadu. He became Governor General of India in 1948. So Papaji was moving in very exalted circles at this period of his life. Gandhi and Rajagopalachari on weekdays and Bhagavan at the weekends. Before I continue with Papaji's narrative, I just want to mention that it was this Rajagopalachari who prevented Gandhi from meeting Ramana Maharshi in the 1930s. Gandhi was driving past the Ramanasaram front gate on his way to give a speech nearby. The driver slowed down, intending to come inside, but Rajagopalachari, the organizer of the trip, ordered him to drive on without stopping. Anamale Swami, who had watched this happen, later asked Bhagavan why Rajagopalachari had stopped the meetings with Bhagavan. Bhagavan laughed and said, "You're probably afraid that Gandhi will go into Samadhi here and forget about politics." We are now back with Papaji describing his meetings with Gandhi in Madras. I used to talk to him privately as well, but during our conversations, he would never look at me eye to eye. He would always be looking down, usually at the takli on which he was spinning thread. He had the most sattvic body I had ever seen. It was copper-colored, and on a subtle level, it was glowing with the light of Brahman. He had a beautiful body. The only body that I have seen that was as beautiful as his was the Maharshis. Both of their bodies used to shine. The photo of Papaji on the left was taken in the late 1940s, a year or so after the events he is describing in the story. The photo of Gandhi also dates from that era. Papaji continues, "I was once sitting with Gandhi when I heard the sound of Ram, Ram coming from him. His lips were not moving, so I looked to see where the sound was coming from. As I focused on the source of the sound, I realized it was emanating from his body. The sound was coming out of the pores of his skin. He didn't need to repeat the name anymore. It was going on continuously inside him and flowing outwards through his skin." This is a photo of Papaji taken in the early 1950s. The text on the slide contains the Kabir verse Papaji included in his letter to Surendra Kaur. He will begin his explanation of it in the next slide. So this is Papaji's continuing explanation of japa. There are several stages of japa, and this is a very advanced stage. First, the japa is repeated with the voice, then it goes on in the mind. Then, thirdly, it is synchronized with the breath. When this goes on effortlessly and becomes spontaneous and automatic, the name repeats itself all the time, even during sleeping and dreaming, because the breath and the name have become one. Without conscious effort, the name is repeated with each incoming and outgoing breath. Kabir once sang the following verse. These lines are the same ones that appeared in Papaji's letter to Surendra Kaur, and for the same reason, I won't attempt to read them out. My pronunciation will be terrible. Papaji is indicating here that Gandhi had reached the stage of ajapa in which the name, in his case Ram, was spontaneously uttering itself with each incoming and outgoing breath. When Papaji was doing his own sadhana in the early 1940s, he was reciting a mantra containing Krishna's name at least 50,000 times a day and synchronizing each repetition with his inhalations and exhalations. I think he himself reached this stage of effortless ajapa that he is speaking about. And here, finally, is Papaji's explanation of the Kabir verse and of the different levels of japa and ajapa. This verse says that when japa done with effort ends, ajapa takes over. Ajapa is when the name repeats itself without the person having to say it. Then the verse says, after ajapa, the next stage is anhat, an awareness of the sound in the heart. Afterwards, the source of the sound merges in consciousness itself. That consciousness cannot be touched or affected by anything in time. First, the sound resolves itself into the silence of the heart. Then even the silence goes back to its source and rests there. Papaji continues with his explanation. Before the name of God is chanted, there is only silence. And when the name subsides into the heart, there is silence again. Why should one extrovert the mind and make it chant the name of God when, in the end, one has to make it go back into the silence again? So I don't tell people to do japa or any other kind of activity. I tell everybody to reject both chanting and non-chanting, because these are ideas, concepts, activities of the mind. So he spent a quarter of a century doing intense japa. Papaji never recommended others to take up this practice. He even told me in Lucknow that had he asked himself the question, who am I once, when he was young, he would have got the right answer and saved himself years of intense japa practice. Look again at the words on the screen. Papaji is saying that the chanting comes out of the primal silence and eventually goes back there. He said, why should one extrovert the mind and make it chant the name of God, when in the end one has to make it go back into the silence again? The implication of this is that the chanting is an unnecessary disruption to the underlying silence. Remember what happened on the day Surendra Kaur first met Papaji. She was chanting Waheguru, Waheguru. On that occasion, Papaji pointed out the silence that lay between the first and second repetitions of Waheguru, and he asked Surendra Kaur what was happening in that gap. Because she was ready for the revelation, and because she was in the presence of someone who could make her aware of the primal silence that is always existing prior to the repetitions, Surendra Kaur dropped into that silence, recognized it to be her own true nature, identified with it, and remained there for the rest of her life. It was a remarkable and seamlessly effortless transition from mind to no mind. Papaji continued with his explanation. When you have rejected everything that appears in consciousness, consciousness merges with its source and remains as that. You cannot get back to this source by any kind of effort. Japa, even continuous ajapa, will not take you to that place. You have to find a master who has reached that place and established himself there. If you are pure and holy enough in the presence of such a being, the source will reveal itself to you and pull you into itself. There is no other way. We don't have time to chant all day. We have other things to do. For me, the key part of this explanation is Papaji's insistence on the necessity of the guru. A japa by itself will not take one to the source and establish oneself there. He says, you have to find a master who has reached that place and established himself there. If you are pure and holy enough in the presence of such a being, the source will reveal itself to you and pull you into itself. This is what happened to Surendra Kaur on the day she met Papaji. It is also what happened to Papaji himself when he went to Bhagavan in the mid-40s to tell him that he could no longer do the Krishna japa that he had been obsessed with for 25 years. In Papaji's case, the power of the self acting through the form of the guru revealed the self to him and gave him the permanent conviction that he didn't need to search for forms of God that were external to the self. Papaji concluded his explanation with the following summary. So when people come here and ask me for advice, I tell them, don't make any effort, simply keep quiet. And while keeping quiet, see if any thought comes. I explain this every day. Follow thoughts backwards and see where they rise from. Go back to the source of thought. If you find it, you will have peace and happiness. That's all you need to know. This was always Papaji's message. Don't extrovert the mind to put effort into a spiritual practice. Just abide quietly at the source of the mind and reject all the blandishments of the mind that try to tempt you to move outwards away from that source. Stay in that source, and that source will reveal the truth of the self to you. I will now go back to what Papaji wrote to Surendra Kaur in his 1987 letter. He wrote, Most important is Sarat Samani Shab Main. Stop here. Don't turn behind. Never look forward. Stay here and now and write to me. Where do you abide? As I mentioned earlier, Surat denotes consciousness, Saman means the same as or equal to, and Shabd, in Kabir's terminology, denotes the divine word, the divine sound, the source of all existence. The verse is saying that japa evolves into ajapa, spontaneous, involuntary repetition of the name. That ajapa then resolves itself into the source, the Shabd that is the same as consciousness. In the final portion of the letter, Papaji is exhorting Surendra Kaur to remain in that timeless and spaceless source and not allow thought to take her anywhere else. He's saying, stop here, don't turn behind, never look forward, stay here and now, and write to me, where do you abide? One of Papaji's often repeated maxims was, don't stir a single thought at the source of the mind. In other words, go back to the source of the mind, the underlying consciousness, and remain there without having or developing any thoughts that could construct narratives of time and space. This is Surendra Kaur in Papaji's living room with her back to the camera, sitting next to Jitu, her son. I am on the right side of the photo in the yellow t-shirt with half my face just inside the picture. Papaji used to hold satsangs in this room before the crowd started to come in the early 90s. Surendra Kaur would occasionally come and attend. On a couple of occasions, I saw Papaji ask her how a particular question from a visitor could best be answered. I never saw him ask for this kind of advice from anyone else. She was the only person I ever saw him defer to on spiritual matters. This was my next question to Surendra Kaur. What advice would you give to other people who want to be in this state that you are in? Surendra Kaur. Be free of thoughts, be free of the mind, and be free of any idea. Then there is nothing left. You leave your shoes outside when you walk into a room. You leave your body behind when you die. In this present moment, take leave of everything you have and everything you can think of. Walk away from them all and be free. It's very simple and very beautiful. And this is my final exchange with Surendra Kaur. David, is there anything else you can say about your experience? Surendra Kaur. I cannot say anything at all. Years ago, Papaji asked me to keep a diary in which I was supposed to record all my experiences. I never wrote a word. There is absolutely nothing I can say about it. And with that forthright comment, I will conclude my presentation on one of Papaji's most outstanding devotees. Thank you for listening.